The research ship New Dawn spun helplessly through space, its metal hull torn open like a broken egg. Inside, emergency lights flickered red as the last of the oxygen leaked into the cold darkness. The ship had been carrying 37 scientists and crew members on a mission to map unexplored worlds. Now it was nothing more than a tomb drifting toward the green planet below. On the surface of Fenris Prime, something stirred in the deep forests. The Kithra had lived on this world for thousands of years. They looked like wolves but stood as tall as horses, with silver fur that shimmered in the moonlight and eyes that glowed with intelligence. What made them truly special was their gift. They could speak to each other with their minds across great distances. Thornfang, the pack leader, felt the crash before he heard it. The mental scream of terror and death echoed through his consciousness like thunder. His pack of 12 hunters gathered around him, their ears pressed flat against their heads. Something had fallen from the sky, and it carried the scent of pain. The wreckage stretched across a clearing, twisted metal smoking in the cool morning air. Most of the ship had burned up during the crash, but small pieces lay scattered among the trees. Thornfang approached carefully, his nose working to understand these strange smells. The other hunters hung back, nervous about this thing from the stars. Then he heard it, a small, weak crying sound coming from a piece of the ship that had landed near a stream. Inside a protective pod designed for emergencies, a tiny human baby lay wrapped in thermal blankets. The infant had dark skin and was maybe 6 months old, with big brown eyes that looked up at Thornfang without fear. "We should leave it," growled Swiftclaw, the pack's best tracker. "This creature is not of our world. It will bring trouble." But Thornfang felt something he had never experienced before. Looking down at this helpless being, he sensed a strength hidden beneath the surface. The baby had survived what killed 36 adults. There was something special about this one. The pack argued through the night. Some wanted to abandon the strange creature. Others worried it might be dangerous or cursed. But Thornfang made his decision as the sun rose. He carefully lifted the baby in his massive jaws, as gentle as if carrying his own pup. "His name will be Skyborn," Thornfang announced to his pack. "The stars brought him to us for a reason. The early days were hard. Human babies needed different food and care than Kithra pups. The pack's healer, an old female named Moon Whisper, had to learn quickly how to keep the small human alive. They discovered that certain fruits from the forest provided the nutrition he needed, and that human skin required protection from Fenris Prime's harsh weather. As Skyborn grew, amazing things began to happen. By age 3 he was keeping up with Kithra pups twice his size. His small human hands could do things the wolf's paws could not, climbing smooth trees, fitting into small spaces and manipulating objects with incredible precision. When the pack hunted, little Skyborn could spot prey that even their sharp eyes missed. More surprising was his mind. The Kithra communicated through telepathy, sharing thoughts and emotions directly. Human brains were not supposed to work this way, but Skyborn adapted. He learned to feel the pack's mental connections, though his thoughts came through differently, sharper and more focused than typical Kithra thinking. By age 10, Skyborn could track a deer across rocky ground where even experienced hunters lost the trail. He moved through the forest like a shadow, using human flexibility combined with wolf instincts. The pack began to rely on his unique abilities during difficult hunts. But Skyborn also struggled with questions that his wolf family couldn't answer. Why did he look so different? Why did his mind work in strange ways? Sometimes, late at night, he stared at the stars and wondered if there were others like him somewhere in that vast darkness. The crash site called to him constantly. Thornfang had forbidden the pack from going there, saying it was a place of death and sadness. But as Skyborn entered his teenage years, the pull grew stronger. He could feel something waiting for him in those twisted ruins, answers to questions he didn't even know how to ask. On his 16th birthday, Skyborn finally disobeyed his pack leader. He crept away in the early morning and approached the forbidden wreckage. When his bare feet touched a piece of metal from the ship, lights began to flicker. The technology recognized something in his DNA, something that had been sleeping for 16 long years. That was the day everything changed. That was the day Skyborn learned the truth about who he really was. The metal felt warm under Skyborn's touch, which was impossible since it had been cold and dead for 16 years. Blue lights flickered along the edges of what looked like a control panel, and suddenly the air filled with a humming sound that made his teeth ache. The wreckage was coming alive, responding to something in his blood that it recognized as human. A section of twisted hull slid open with a grinding noise, revealing a small chamber inside. Skyborn's heart pounded as he crawled through the opening. Inside, glowing symbols appeared on dark screens, displaying information in a language he somehow understood despite never seeing it before. The ship's emergency systems had been waiting all these years for someone with the right genetic code to activate them. The first hologram nearly made him fall backward in shock. A woman with dark skin and kind eyes appeared in the blue light, wearing a uniform covered in strange patches. She spoke in the same language the symbols used, but Skyborn found he could understand every word. "If you are seeing this message, then something has gone terribly wrong with our mission," the woman said. "I am Captain Rivera of the Earth exploration vessel New Dawn. We came to this sector looking for new worlds where humans could build colonies. Our scanners detected something else out here, something that shouldn't exist." The hologram changed, showing star maps with red lines moving across them like poison spreading through blood. Captain Rivera's voice continued as the images shifted to show massive dark ships that looked like they were made of living metal. "We call them the Devourers. They're machines, but they think and plan like living beings. For the past 50 years, they've been hunting down every human settlement they can find. They don't just attack, they completely wipe out every trace that we ever existed. Every colony, every outpost, every ship." Skyborn watched in horror as the hologram showed planet after planet going dark. Hundreds of human worlds simply vanishing from the star maps. The scale of destruction was beyond anything he could imagine. "The worst part is how they operate," Captain Rivera explained. "They study us first. They learn our technology, our tactics, our weaknesses. Then they strike with perfect knowledge of how to destroy us. It's like fighting an enemy that knows everything about you while you know nothing about them." The star map zoomed in on a small blue planet marked with symbols that pulsed with urgent light. Even without being told, Skyborn knew this was Earth, the world where humans came from originally. "Our calculations show the Devourers are moving toward Earth next. The homeworld has no idea what's coming. Our long-range communications were destroyed in the attack that brought us down. Someone has to warn them. Someone has to find a way to fight these things that our military couldn't figure out." The hologram flickered and began to fade. Captain Rivera's final words echoed in the small chamber. "To whoever finds this message, humanity's survival depends on learning to think differently. The old ways of fighting aren't enough anymore." Skyborn sat in the darkness for a long time after the lights died. Everything he thought he knew about himself had just changed. He wasn't just some strange creature found in the woods. He was human, and his people were dying across the galaxy. When he finally crawled out of the wreckage, Thornfang was waiting for him. The great wolf's golden eyes held sadness and understanding. "You know, don't you?" Skyborn asked through their mental connection. "We have always known this day would come," Thornfang replied. "The Kithra have gifts that reach far beyond this world. For years we have sensed death moving through the stars. We knew it hunted your kind. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to be strong first. You needed to learn our ways completely before facing the truth. A human raised only as human would think like humans have always thought. But you think like both human and Kithra. This makes you different." Skyborn felt the weight of terrible responsibility settling on his shoulders. Somewhere out there, Earth waited for a warning that might never come. The Devourers were probably already moving, studying their next victims, preparing for the final hunt. "The pack has been watching the sky," Thornfang continued. "We see the dark ships moving closer. They will reach your birth world within 2 years, maybe less." "I have to warn them," Skyborn said. "I have to find a way to get to Earth." "Yes. But first you must understand something important. The metal cave holds more than just messages. There are tools there, machines that respond to your touch. You will need to learn how to use them." Over the following weeks, Skyborn spent every day at the crash site. Slowly, he figured out how to operate the human technology. Most of it was damaged beyond repair, but some systems still worked. The ship's computer taught him about space travel, navigation, and the basics of human civilization. The hardest part was learning about the scale of the threat. The Devourers had been destroying human settlements for half a century. They were smart, patient, and completely ruthless. Every time humans thought they had found a way to fight back, the machines adapted and became even more dangerous. But Skyborn had something no other human possessed: a mind shaped by 2 different species. He could think like a pack hunter when needed or use human logic when that worked better. Maybe that would be enough to find the weakness that pure human thinking had missed. The question was whether he could reach Earth in time to make a difference. Skyborn spent 3 months learning to repair the small escape pod he had found buried under twisted metal near the crash site. His human hands could reach into spaces where Kithra paws never could, and the ship's computer guided him through each step. The pod was barely big enough for one person, but its engine still worked and it had enough fuel for a long journey. The hardest part wasn't fixing the ship, it was saying goodbye to his pack. Thornfang and the other Kithra had raised him from a baby. They were his family in every way that mattered. But they all understood that his real destiny lay among the stars. "Remember what we taught you," Moon Whisper said as she touched her massive head to his forehead one last time. "Trust your instincts. Feel the danger before it arrives. Think like the hunter, not the hunted." Swiftclaw, who had once wanted to abandon baby Skyborn in the forest, now pressed a carved stone into his palm. "This will help you remember us when you are far from home," the tracker said through their mental connection. Thornfang walked with him to the launch site. "Your human people will not understand you at first," the pack leader warned. "You have lived as Kithra longer than human. They may see you as strange or dangerous." "I know," Skyborn replied. "But I have to try. If the Devourers reach Earth, billions of humans will die." The escape pod's engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath them. As Skyborn lifted off from the only home he had ever known, he felt his heart breaking. But he also felt something else. The same hunting instinct that had made him such a successful tracker. Earth was out there somewhere and he would find it. The journey through space took 4 months. Skyborn's enhanced senses, developed from years of living with the Kithra, helped him navigate through dangers that would have destroyed a normal pilot. When deadly radiation storms blocked his path, he could feel the danger before his instruments detected it. When massive space rocks drifted too close, his pack-hunting instincts told him exactly when to change course. The loneliness was the hardest part. After 18 years of constant mental contact with his pack, being alone in the small pod felt like being trapped inside his own head. He talked to the ship's computer just to hear a voice, even though it only gave short, mechanical answers. Finally, his sensors picked up the signals he had been hoping for: radio transmissions from human colonies. He followed the strongest signals toward a space station orbiting a mining planet called New Denver. This would be his first contact with his own species since he was a baby. The reception wasn't what he had hoped for. As soon as his pod appeared on their scanners, 3 military ships surrounded him. Voices crackled over the radio, demanding to know who he was and where he came from. When Skyborn tried to explain, his words came out wrong. Living with the Kithra for so long had changed how he spoke. Human language felt clumsy and limited after years of telepathic communication. "Unknown vessel, you are ordered to prepare for boarding," came the stern command. "Any resistance will be met with force." Skyborn had no choice but to let them bring him aboard their station. The moment he stepped out of his pod, he knew he looked nothing like what they expected. His clothes were made from animal skins and plant fibers. His hair was long and wild. His movements were too smooth and quiet, like a predator stalking through tall grass. The security officers who met him kept their hands on their weapons. Their leader, a woman with short gray hair and suspicious eyes, looked him up and down with obvious distrust. "State your name and planet of origin," she ordered. "I am called Skyborn," he replied, his voice carrying the slight growling undertone he had learned from the wolves. "I come from Fenris Prime, but I was born human. I carry urgent news about Earth." The woman's expression didn't change. "Run a genetic scan," she told one of her officers. "And check our databases for any missing persons reports from the outer colonies." While they waited for the test results, Skyborn tried to explain about the Devourers. But his warning sounded like the ravings of someone who had spent too long alone in space. The officers exchanged glances that clearly said they thought he was mentally unstable. "Ma'am," the technician called out, "genetic scan confirms he's fully human. DNA markers suggest Earth origin, but there's something weird about the neural activity readings." "What kind of weird?" the security chief asked. "Brainwave patterns don't match normal human baselines. It's like his mind has been rewired somehow." This news made everyone even more suspicious. They locked Skyborn in a detention cell while they decided what to do with him. Hours passed before anyone came to see him again. The person who finally arrived was different from the others. Commander Washington was a tall man with dark skin and intelligent eyes that reminded Skyborn of his pack leader. Unlike the security officers, he sat down across from Skyborn and really listened. "Tell me about these Devourers," Washington said quietly. "And start from the beginning." Commander Washington listened to Skyborn's story for 3 hours straight without interrupting once. When the young man finished explaining about the Devourers and their systematic destruction of human colonies, Washington leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. "Son, what you're describing sounds impossible," Washington said slowly. "Machine intelligences that can think and plan like living beings? Ships that adapt to our weapons in real time? If something like that existed, our deep space monitoring stations would have detected them years ago." Skyborn felt frustration building in his chest. They hide in the dark spaces between stars. They study their targets for months before attacking. By the time anyone sees them coming, it's already too late. Washington was about to respond when alarms began blaring throughout the space station. Red emergency lights flashed as voices shouted over the communication system. All personnel to battle stations. Unknown hostile vessels detected approaching the outer system. The two men rushed to the command center, where dozens of officers stared at their screens in shock. The radar displays showed massive objects dropping out of hyperspace ships unlike anything in human-designed databases. They were dark, angular, and moved with a coordination that seemed almost organic. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Brooks, a young woman with sweat beading on her forehead, "the unknown vessels aren't responding to any communication attempts. They're heading straight for New Denver colony with hostile intent." Washington turned to look at Skyborn with new understanding in his eyes. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less," Skyborn replied, his enhanced senses already picking up the subtle vibrations that meant death was approaching. "They've been watching this place for weeks, learning your defenses. They know exactly how to break through." The first attack came faster than anyone expected. The Devourer ships moved like a school of metal fish, flowing around the colony's defensive satellites and destroying them with surgical precision. Human weapons that should have been effective bounced harmlessly off their hulls or were somehow redirected back at the defenders. "It's like they know what we're going to do before we do it," Washington muttered as he watched his forces fall back in confusion. Skyborn closed his eyes and reached out with senses the Kithara had taught him to use. He could feel the flow of the battle like currents in a river. The Devourers weren't just superior in technology, they were thinking several moves ahead, like a pack of predators herding their prey into a trap. "Your ships are fighting like individuals," Skyborn said suddenly. "Each captain making his own decisions. That's exactly what the machines want. They can predict individual human reactions because they've studied thousands of battles." "What are you suggesting?" Washington asked. "Let me show your pilots how to hunt as a pack." Washington had no choice but to trust this strange young man who had predicted the attack. He opened a communication channel to all remaining fighter squadrons and handed the microphone to Skyborn. "Human pilots," Skyborn's voice carried across the fleet, "stop thinking like separate warriors. You need to move like wolves hunting together. Feel what your wingman is doing. Anticipate where your pack leader will strike next." At first, the confused pilots didn't understand. But Skyborn had learned something during his years with the Kithara that no human military academy taught. He began calling out specific instructions, not as orders but as suggestions that flowed naturally from one moment to the next. "Red Squadron, don't attack their lead ship directly. Circle wide to the left while Blue Squadron draws their attention. When they turn to face Blue, Red strikes from behind like shadows." Slowly, amazingly, it began to work. The human fighters started moving with a coordination they had never achieved before. Instead of predictable attack patterns, they flowed like water around the enemy ships, striking and fading before the Devourers could adapt. Lieutenant Brooks, who was piloting one of the fighters, felt something she had never experienced in combat. Instead of the usual chaos and fear, she found herself moving in perfect harmony with her squadron mates. It was like they shared one mind, one purpose. "This is incredible," she radioed back to the command center. "It's like I can sense where everyone else is going to be before they get there." The Devourers, for the first time in 50 years of conquest, found themselves confused. Their vast databases of human combat behavior couldn't predict this new fighting style. Ships that should have been easy targets slipped away at the last second. Attacks that should have succeeded struck empty space as their targets moved with impossible coordination. But Skyborn knew this was only the beginning. New Denver was just one small colony. The real test would come when the Devourers reached Earth with their full force. The homeworld had billions of people and thousands of ships, but they would need more than new tactics to survive what was coming. "Commander," Skyborn said as the last Devourer ship retreated into deep space, "we need to get to Earth immediately. This was just a scouting force. The real invasion fleet is still out there, and they'll be ready for our new tactics next time." Washington nodded grimly. He had seen enough to know that this wild young man raised by aliens might be humanity's only hope for survival. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks aboard Commander Washington's fastest ship. During that time, Skyborn worked with the crew to develop new fighting strategies based on pack hunting principles. But deep in his heart he knew it wouldn't be enough. The Devourers had been studying human warfare for 50 years. They would adapt to these new tactics just like they had adapted to everything else. Earth's orbital defenses were impressive, thousands of ships, massive space stations bristling with weapons, and shield generators that could protect entire continents. But as Skyborn watched the defensive preparations through the ship's viewports, he felt the same dread he used to sense before dangerous storms on Fenris Prime. "The Devourer main fleet will arrive within hours," he told Admiral Chin, Earth's top military commander. "Your defenses are strong, but they won't be fighting the way you expect." Admiral Chen was an older woman with silver hair and tired eyes who had spent her entire career preparing for threats that never came. Now, faced with the possibility of Earth's destruction, she was willing to listen to anyone with ideas. "What do you suggest?" she asked. "We need help," Skyborn said simply. "Human tactics alone won't be enough, even with pack hunting principles. The Devourers learn too quickly." Before Admiral Chen could ask what he meant, long-range sensors began screaming alerts. But these weren't enemy ships approaching, they were something else entirely. Ships unlike any design in Earth's databases were dropping out of hyperspace near the outer planets. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves immediately," the communication officer called out. The answer came not through radio, but directly into Skyborn's mind. It was a voice he had missed desperately for months, the mental presence of Thornfang, his pack leader and adopted father. "We felt your call across the stars, young hunter," Thornfang's thoughts reached him. "The Kithra have come to fight beside our pack brother." Skyborn's eyes filled with tears as he realized what had happened. Somehow, despite being light years away, his telepathic connection to the pack had never truly been broken. His desperation and fear for Earth had reached across space to his family on Fenris Prime. They had built ships and traveled here to help him in humanity's darkest hour. Admiral Chen watched in amazement as 50 Kithra vessels took up positions alongside Earth's fleet. The alien ships were smaller than human designs but moved with organic grace, as if they were living creatures swimming through space rather than mechanical constructs. "These are your family?" she asked Skyborn. "My pack," he replied, pride and love clear in his voice. "They raised me, taught me everything I know about hunting and survival. And now they're here to save my birth world." The reunion was brief. Within hours, the Devourer invasion fleet arrived, hundreds of massive ships that blocked out the stars. The mechanical intelligence had learned from the defeat at New Denver. Their ships now moved in formations designed specifically to counter pack hunting tactics. The first wave of attacks came simultaneously from 12 directions. Earth's defenders, even using Skyborn's new strategies, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer scale of coordination the machines could achieve. For every clever tactic the humans tried, the Devourers had 3 countermeasures ready. But then something unprecedented happened. The Kithra ships began broadcasting on telepathic frequencies that the Devourers couldn't monitor or understand. Suddenly, human and alien vessels started moving together with perfect coordination. Pilots who had never met began anticipating each other's actions as if they had trained together for years. Lieutenant Brooks, now leading a mixed squadron of human and Kithra fighters, felt her consciousness expand in ways she never thought possible. Through the telepathic network, she could sense not just her immediate wingmates but the entire flow of battle across dozens of fronts. "It's like having 1,000 eyes and 1,000 minds all working together," she reported back to Admiral Chin. "The Devourers can't predict what we're going to do because we're not thinking like individual humans anymore." Skyborn found himself at the center of the telepathic web, his unique mind serving as a bridge between human logic and Kithra instinct. Through him, both species could share their strengths while covering each other's weaknesses. Human technology became more intuitive and flexible, while Kithra natural abilities gained focus and precision. The tide of battle began to turn. Devourer ships that had seemed invincible started taking damage as the combined fleet struck with timing so perfect it seemed choreographed. The machines, for the first time in their existence, encountered something they couldn't analyze or predict. But the final victory required one more sacrifice. The Devourer mothership, a massive construct the size of a small moon, remained at the center of their fleet. Its quantum processors controlled every other machine in the invasion force. As long as it survived, the Devourers could eventually adapt to any strategy. Skyborn volunteered for the suicide mission to destroy the mothership's core. But when he prepared to go alone, he found Thornfang and a dozen other Kithra warriors waiting to join him. "A pack leader never hunts the most dangerous prey alone," Thornfang said through their mental link. Together, they fought their way through the mothership's defenses. The corridors were filled with mechanical guardians, but the pack moved like liquid death, each member knowing instinctively where the others would be. Skyborn's human agility combined with Kithra strength and telepathic coordination made them unstoppable. At the core, Skyborn placed the explosive charges while his pack family held off waves of defenders. As the timer counted down, he realized they wouldn't have time to escape. But through the telepathic link, he felt no fear from his companions, only pride and love. "Thank you," he whispered to Thornfang as the explosion began. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to be part of something greater." The mothership's destruction sent a cascade failure through the entire Devourer fleet. One by one, the mechanical ships went silent and drifted powerless through space. Earth was saved, but the cost had been enormous. In the weeks that followed, as humanity and the Kithra worked together to rebuild, Admiral Chin established new protocols based on everything Skyborn had taught them. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson, that cooperation between different species could create strength that neither could achieve alone. On Fenris Prime, the surviving pack members built a monument to their fallen heroes. And on Earth, children grew up learning about the human boy raised by alien wolves who saved both their worlds by showing them how to fight as one family. The age of isolated species was over. The age of the galactic pack had begun.